So today we are looking at how to plan and answer a 16-mark question in the exam, which is obviously an extended response question. And we are going to specifically look at A2 criminal psychology for Edexcel. So we're going to go through an example of an exam question, which is a 16-mark question, and then have a look at how we go about planning the type of marks that are available for this question. So Kylie witnessed a crime and had to go to the police station for an interview. The crime involved a robbery of a shop in a busy shopping centre. Kylie was walking past the shop with her friends when she heard the shopkeeper shouting for help as the thief ran out of the shop. The police carried out a cognitive interview to gather as much information as possible from Kylie about what she witnessed. The question: to what extent would the cognitive interview be effective in gathering accurate information from Kylie about the crime she witnessed? You must make reference to the context in your answer. 16 marks. Now, for 16, initial thought is 16 marks is a lot, okay? And the question really is asking you, the focus is cognitive interview techniques, okay? And you've also been given a scenario, so you know that there are definitely AO1 and AO2 application points here as well, okay? It also starts off with to what extent, and also the word effective in the question, which really indicates some sort of evaluation involved as well. So this question requires you to describe, so AO1 skills, it requires you to apply AO2 skills, and it also requires you to evaluate, which is AO3 skills. So on the next slide, I have produced a plan for this question, which really breaks down the number of marks that you need for each of the different skills. Okay, so let's have a look column by column. So it's really important, firstly, to make sure that you actually plan for a question, especially with this number of marks, 16 marks. Okay, planning, even 2-3 minutes planning helps you to give your answer a bit of structure, keep you on focus really of the question. So AO1 description for 6 marks, AO2 is 4 marks for application, and AO3 6 marks. So we've got 6 marks, 4 marks, and 6. Okay, so the description, the evaluation, the question is going to be the most weighting in the answer. Okay, and you've got additional 4 marks for application. So let's have a look at firstly at the AO1 descriptive points. So the question really in terms of AO1 skill is really asking you firstly to describe the cognitive interview technique. And this includes the 4-step process of cognitive techniques. For example, reporting all the information. So the witness was obviously report all the information. Number 2 is reinstating the context. Okay, so this is where they might revisit the context to jog their memory. Reversing the order of events. Okay, so rather than recalling things in chronological order, they would recall things backwards. And fourthly, changing perspective. So this is where the witness would be asked to describe the event from somebody else's perspective. Okay, so these are the kind of things you need to be describing for AO1. Okay, so describing what cognitive interviews are, and then giving some examples of the techniques, okay, that a cognitive interview would use. AO2 application. So remember, application is all to do with the scenario itself, okay, and explaining Kylie's situation. So once you've done your description, you then move on to explaining how those interview techniques that you've just described in AO1 would then apply to Kylie's situation. For example, if I was to choose to write about reinstating the context, you would say Kylie could be encouraged to report her emotions and how she felt during the event. And also the triggers in the context, so the environmental triggers, will aid as cues to her recall. Okay, so what you're doing is you're taking the AO1 descriptive points and you're sort of applying them to Kylie's situations. How would they be used? What would Kylie be doing when she's changing perspective? Describe exactly what she would be saying, what she would be doing. And then AO3 evaluation for 6 marks. Again, what you're doing here is you are explaining or evaluating what the strengths and weaknesses are of the cognitive interview, because obviously that word effective in the question. Okay, let's flip back to the question. So to what extent would the cognitive interview be effective? To what extent, that kind of a sort of start of a question does require normally evaluation. Okay, so let's go back to the evaluation. So evaluating the strengths and weaknesses, and within the evaluation, it's a good idea to always use supporting studies. Okay, so you've got example of Gieselman 1985. They found obviously that cognitive interviews resulted in more accurate information being recalled. Got another study there by Holiday in 2003, which actually carried out cognitive interviews with children and found that they were obviously more accurate compared to your standard police interviews. The fact that they increase accuracy of recall is a strength as well. Problems or weaknesses as well, so don't forget to write about the weaknesses of cognitive interview techniques. The fact that they increase actually in incorrect information as well. So some studies have found that there's been an increase in actually incorrect information being recalled. And finally, cognitive interviews do require professional training, which can be quite costly to the police department. Therefore, it's not always practical. Okay. So there you go. There's your plan really for a 16-mark question. And initially it looks quite difficult to gain 16 marks. But then when you plan and you break it down to the 6 marks and 4 marks and 6 marks, you can see where the marks would be.